Donald Trump is in the Epstein files thousands and thousands of times. In those files, there's highly disturbing allegations of Donald Trump raping children, of Donald Trump threatening to kill children. So I encourage the press to go look at these allegations.
Something deeply unsettling has begun to surface from inside one of the most controversial investigations of the last decade. Thousands of newly released documents connected to the late financier and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein have suddenly thrust an unexpected name back into the spotlight: former U.S. President Donald Trump. Emails, flight logs, private correspondence.
The new batch comes as the DOJ is being criticized for not releasing all of the documents by the deadline set by Congress and heavily redacting many of those they have put out.
There's also a court document that talks about a 14-year-old girl who was taken to Mar-a-Lago in 1994. She said that she was there with Jeffrey Epstein, who introduced her to its owner, Donald Trump. Epstein apparently elbowed Trump playfully, asking him, referring to Jane Doe, "This is a good one, right?" Trump smiled and nodded in agreement. They both chuckled, and Doe felt uncomfortable, but at the time was too young to understand why.
Individually, each document may appear inconclusive, but together, they raise a question that is now echoing through Washington, the media, and political circles around the world. What exactly did Donald Trump know about Jeffrey Epstein, and when did he know it? Because if even part of these documents proves accurate, the political consequences could be enormous.
Let me tell you highlights of what are in these files. New flight records, newly revealed prosecutor notes, documentation of Donald Trump traveling with Epstein to a degree that even the people inside the DOJ at the time, people with knowledge of the case, found to be a, quote, surprise. More jet travel with Epstein than they knew at the time.
To understand why these documents are causing such intense reaction, we need to step back for a moment. Jeffrey Epstein's criminal network, exposed years ago, revealed a disturbing operation involving the exploitation of underage girls and connections to powerful figures across finance, politics, and global elites.
Tonight, the Justice Department releasing its biggest batch yet of documents related to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The new release also includes documents that mention President Trump. In one email, a federal prosecutor, citing flight logs, says Trump was a passenger on at least 8 flights between 1993 and 1996, that he traveled with his then-wife Marla Maples, daughter Tiffany, and son Eric. And saying on another flight, the only 3 passengers are Epstein, Trump, and a 20-year-old whose name is redacted. The files also include this handwritten note, purportedly written by Epstein and sent to Dr. Larry Nassar, another notorious sex offender, including the quote, "Our president also shares our love of young nubile girls."
For years, investigators, journalists, and lawmakers have tried to uncover who else may have been aware of or involved in Epstein's activities, but much of the evidence remained locked away in sealed court files, private records, and government archives. Until now. Recently, the U.S. Department of Justice released nearly 30,000 additional pages of documents connected to Epstein's network. Emails, flight records, prosecutor notes.
As far as the Epstein files I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. I threw him out of my club many years ago because I thought he was a sick pervert. But I guess I turned out to be right.
Internal communications. And as journalists began combing through the material, one discovery began appearing again and again and again: Donald Trump's name. Not once, not twice, but repeatedly. In fact, in some of the emails reviewed by reporters, Trump's name appeared in a significant portion of the correspondence linked to Epstein's communications. That alone would raise eyebrows.
In a 2017 email to former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, Epstein writing, quote, "I have met some very bad people. None as bad as Trump. Not one decent cell in his body. So yes, dangerous." In a 2018 text to an unidentified person, Epstein writes, quote, "I am the one person who can take him down." Trump and Epstein were friends for more than a decade. In a 2019 email to author Michael Wolff, Epstein writes, "Trump said he asked me to resign. Never a member ever. Of course, he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop."
but it's the content of several messages that has ignited the real. One particular email has become the center of the political storm. In the message, written privately by Epstein, there is a claim that has stunned legal analysts. According to the correspondence, Epstein wrote that Trump was aware of the young girls involved in his circle. Now, to be absolutely clear, this statement by itself does not prove any crime was committed, but it directly contradicts a narrative that Trump has maintained for years. Trump has repeatedly said that while he once knew Epstein socially, he later distanced himself from him after suspecting inappropriate behavior. In fact, Trump has publicly stated that he eventually banned Epstein from his Mar-a-Lago club. For many years, that explanation largely stood uncontested, but the newly released emails complicate that story, because Epstein's private words suggest something very different, and that contradiction is precisely why political observers say this moment could become significant, not necessarily because it proves guilt, but because it challenges the established timeline of events. Let's examine what the documents actually reveal. Among the materials released were flight records from the 1990s. Those records show that Donald Trump traveled on flights connected to Epstein several times during that period, sometimes accompanied by family members. Again, none of this is illegal. Many wealthy and influential people associated with Epstein socially before his crimes became widely known. But other details in the documents are raising new questions. In one email exchange, Epstein reportedly suggested he possessed damaging knowledge about powerful individuals. In another message, he appeared to boast about information that could potentially harm political figures. This has led some analysts to speculate about a disturbing possibility. Was Epstein simply exaggerating, or was he hinting that he held leverage over influential people? Because if Epstein believed he had compromising information about major political figures, including a future U.S. president, that raises an entirely different set of concerns, not just personal scandal, but national security implications. The idea that a criminal operator might possess blackmail material against powerful leaders is something intelligence agencies treat extremely seriously, and that's why these documents are attracting so much attention from lawmakers. Predictably, the political response has been explosive. Several Democratic lawmakers have called for full transparency and the complete release of all Epstein-related files. Their argument is straightforward. If there is nothing damaging in the documents, then there should be no reason to keep portions of them hidden behind redactions. On the other side, Trump's allies have pushed back strongly. They argue that the timing of the revelations is suspicious. Some claim the emails are being selectively highlighted to create a misleading narrative. Others have dismissed the entire controversy as politically motivated. And Trump himself has repeatedly described the allegations surrounding Epstein as a political hoax, insisting he had little involvement with the financier. This political standoff has created a familiar pattern. One side demanding more documents, the other side questioning the motives behind their release. Meanwhile, journalists continue to sift through thousands of pages of newly available records, and every few days, another email, another reference, another piece of correspondence surfaces. The bigger political implication. But beyond the immediate political fight lies a deeper question, because this story isn't just about one email, or one flight log, or even one political figure. It's about the broader mystery that has surrounded Jeffrey Epstein's network for years. How did a man running such a disturbing criminal operation manage to maintain connections with some of the world? So the key question now becomes this: what happens next? Thousands of pages of documents are still being analyzed. Legal experts, congressional staff, and journalists are continuing to examine the records line by line. More revelations could emerge, or the documents could ultimately prove far less dramatic than early reports suggest. But one thing is certain: the debate over transparency is not going away. Critics are asking a simple question: if these documents truly contain nothing incriminating, why not release everything? Why continue the legal battles over redactions and sealed files? Because in politics, as in journalism, information gaps often create suspicion. And when those gaps involve one of the most notorious criminal cases in modern history, the pressure for answers only grows. History has shown that political scandals rarely unfold in a single dramatic moment. More often, they develop slowly. A document here, an email there, a small contradiction that gradually raises bigger questions. That may be what we are witnessing now. These newly released Epstein files may ultimately change very little, or they may become the starting point for one of the most politically explosive investigations of the decade. At this stage, the truth remains buried somewhere within tens of thousands of pages of documents. But the one certainty is this: the world is now looking far more closely at those pages than ever before. And as investigators continue to read them, the story may only just be beginning.